welcome to the Uncle Skelly Show. Well, episode number 4 of the Uncle Skelly Show is upon us, and this time around I got to interview the president, or quote-unquote commander-in-chief of the KISS Army, Bill Starkey. Bill and his friend Jay Evans founded the KISS Army back in 1975 while relentlessly requesting KISS music at a radio station in Terre Haute, Indiana. We discuss Bill's long journey as a devoted KISS fan, his encounters with the band, and all other things pertaining to KISS. So you wanted the best, you got the best. The hottest podcast in the world, the Uncle Skelly Show.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I can't complain. It's a fantastic Friday.
Yeah, how's the weather down there?
We had 3 good days, really great fall days, and then it got a little cloudy today. It looks like we're going to have some rain. So we could use it, but fall's a great time around here, I think.
Yeah, same here. It's got that, I'm in Ontario. I'm like kind of close to the Detroit border.
Oh, wow.
So it's got kind of that Halloween kind of vibe today in the weather. But
oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we're here to talk about the KISS Army and how it came to be, and I guess the big anniversary is on November 21st, 40
yes,
years.
It is.
So I don't know if you want to give a little brief rundown of how that all started. I know Wikipedia states that it was January 1975 that you first started to contact this radio station.
Yeah, it's hard to say when we did it. I had seen KISS twice as an opening act, and I came back to my buddies in Terre Haute, specifically to Jay Evans, my quote-unquote field marshal. and Jay was also a KISS fan, and I was telling him how great KISS was. And Jay was always big on the calling in request lines, and I think it was his idea to call up our local radio station and ask for KISS, and we were always rebuffed. And back in the 70s, you could call and request music, and within an hour, you could probably get what you wanted to hear, and it was kind of neat. And we were always, told no or whatever, and without a reason. Then eventually we were able to get kind of friendly with the radio personalities, and they'd say stuff like, well, the program director doesn't like them. And then it went so further to say that they would say the program director thought they were a New York fag band, and they threw their KISS records away. Well, eventually the program director, he had the prime slot, which is like the 5 o'clock slot. And we called him at one time, and I think he told us that they were a mediocre Bachman Turner overdrive or something, and we really took offense to that, and decided that we were going to continue to bug him about KISS. And eventually Jay would do stuff like he would make blank bootleg KISS 8-tracks for friends to like introduce the music to them, since we couldn't get them on our local radio station. And of course we would get teased a lot about at our high school because back in those days you wore your favorite band like you would a sports team, and people would say, KISS my ass, or even worse, if KISS is so great, Starkey, why aren't they on the radio? So 4 or 5 months later, I was fortunate enough to find out that KISS was playing here as a headliner up here in Indianapolis, and I convinced Jay, and maybe we could get like 2 or 3 carloads of guys. I mean, let's face it, tickets were like $5 a piece back then, and we all drove up here to Indianapolis to watch KISS as a headliner, and all of a sudden I had my first converts to the KISS Army. So when we got back to high school, one of the guys actually went in the print shop and made KISS T-shirts. His name was Rob Smith, and Rob, I always laugh and say, made the first manufactured KISS shirt.
So that was November 21st. That was a
No. This was April 21st, 1975.
Okay, so you were already into them before they exploded. Like you were
right around the
Yeah,
time of Dressed to Kill.
I was into them in 1974 when I saw them open for ZZ Top, and the funny thing about it is I was supposed to go see Deep Purple, and the tickets didn't show up. And my dad, who was a record expediter, which meant he shipped records for Columbia Records here over in Terre Haute, where at that time most of the records in the United States were, believe it or not, made in Terre Haute, Indiana. And my dad was just a typical factory worker, but he was an expediter, and a lot of times when you would work for these record companies, they would send you perks. They might be free albums or tickets, and Deep Purple tickets were offered to my dad, and he asked me if I wanted to go, and I said yeah. And so we did it, and then the Deep Purple tickets didn't materialize, and Dad said, well, do you want to go see Kiss instead? And I said, yeah, sure, we'll go. And that's when we went to see Kiss.
So that...
And that was in Evansville, and I'd seen Kiss twice before I came back to Terre Haute. And it was kind of hard to do that because, people would say, well, they would say it politely. Say, well, Bill, I know you think Kiss is great and all this stuff, but, you've never been to any of the concerts before, so of course you think Kiss is great. You've never seen anybody else. and it was kind of hard to defend that, because they were right. I hadn't seen anybody else, but I still thought what I saw was pretty good. Because right after Kiss played, ZZ Top came out, and my dad even said, he goes, well, have you seen enough? And I said, well, yeah, I want to go. I'm ready to go. And then the second time I saw them, they opened up for REO Speedwagon, and at that time REO was huge around here in Indiana. Then after REO played, again, Kiss came on last, which was really rare for a opening band. And again, I knew what I saw, and I thought that they were great. So it was convincing Jay and everybody else to go along with me. Of course, and Jay was very willing anyway, because Jay was very open-minded. He and I had along the same music taste anyway, and so he was a great participant and a person to have that, as a best friend. So we had taken our carload of kids, and this was our senior year of high school. Of course, we came back to Terre Haute, and we were still up against the radio people who wouldn't play Kiss. Well, this time, instead of me and Jay calling the radio station and calling ourselves the Kiss Army, we had a lot of other allies with us, people who had already also seen the band. And I think we were just doing it on a lark. We didn't think that, anything would come of it. I mean, we knew what we believed, but I mean, it wasn't done with any malice or anything. Of course, we would get upset because we felt that there was a bias against the band, because the other bands that were getting airplay, like the Beatles and the Eagles and all those bands, a lot of those bands had come to Terre Haute and played concerts, and we're lucky to draw 5,000, 6,000 people in a 10,000-seat arena. But we were pretty much convinced that Kiss was really the real deal. So this went on all through the summer of '75 after we had graduated from high school, and we were getting ready for Jay and a lot of other guys were getting ready for college. Well, I didn't have any college aspirations, so I was basically just some goofball in his mom's basement, which was really all it was. So
you're going to enlist in the Kiss Army.
Yeah, there you go. And when he had the Kiss Army, it was in my basement. I was the commander-in-chief, jokingly, and Jay dubbed himself the field marshal. And eventually another radio station came into Terre Haute, and it was a fairly new one, and it was named WPFR, I believe, and they were pretty willing to play Kiss. So we were getting some Kiss music on the air there, which was great. But it still wasn't what we really wanted because the big playlist was on, WBTS. So eventually, Kiss released Kiss Alive, which was in September, and that was the perfect timing because then it was kind of getting hard for them to ignore the band, and I guess they were getting other calls from people. And
it's when Rock and Roll All Night took off, right? The live version.
Oh God, no. And you know what was funny is, like I said, when I saw them the third time, I don't even think Rock and Roll All Night played that well. Rock and Roll All Night probably didn't really start taking off till maybe November or December. But so here we are in September, and I had finally kind of gotten through to the disc jockey, and they said, well, you know, we threw all of our Kiss records away, so if you'd be so kind as to, you know, give us your Kiss records, and we'll dub them off, and we'll play selected songs for the radio. And what was cool is, you know, we got to say what songs we wanted to hear. Well, of course, we like them all, you know, because to us it was all about the music. It wasn't about makeup or pyro or any of that stuff because, you know, I mean, that was icing on the cake, but it was all about the music for us. So I borrowed my mom's car, and I said, hey, you know, can I take these albums over there to the radio station? And she's always thought I was crazy anyhow, because here I was doing this stuff with this rock group that, you know, she just didn't see.
And they weren't really that big yet either, right? So there was
no. And she had went with me though to the. She'd actually, it's kind of ironic. My dad took me to my first Kiss show. My mom took me to my second. And it wasn't my mom's cup of tea, but she could understand why people were into it. I think they just went out of curiosity because, as very involved parents, yet pretty liberal parents, they wanted to see what was going on at these crazy wild rock concerts. Well, they saw that they were crazy and wild, but as far as anybody getting hurt or any kind of crazy debauchery, it wasn't anything like that at all. So I take my records down to the radio station, and so there. And oddly enough, the program director and the people, the radio personalities, are still kind of playing games with us, and they would do stuff like play "Love Theme" from Kiss before they would go into a news thing.
It's a terrible choice.
And then we would get mad and say, well, and you see what that was back then is, if a radio station needed like a 50-second interval before they went right into the news, they would put a filler in, but they didn't want to put in anything like Freebird or something that was like, you know, 20 minutes long or something that was considered a classic tune.
Love Theme's pretty short,
so,
2 minutes, 24
seconds. So they
seconds.
put in like Love Theme from Kiss, and either Jay or I would call and complain and say, hey, what the hell's going on? And they said, well, they'd laugh and say, well, you wanted Kiss songs, so you got one. So, you know, and then they'd laugh and hang up on us. Or they'd do something like they would play Strutter, and they wouldn't say who it was. And Jay would call in, or somebody else would call in and say, you guys, we appreciate the fact that you played Kiss, but this time you didn't say who it was. So we weren't satisfied with just the airplay. We wanted the whole thing. So this was going on for a while, and then oddly enough, I think in late September, things were really cooking because Kiss Alive was getting played on both radio stations, and people were starting to get curious over this, and we were told that the disc jockeys would what was funny, they would say this one goes out to the Kiss Army. Well, people wanted to know who that was. People were wanting to know how to join it and stuff like that, and that was kind of cool. So things were going great, and then all of a sudden the disc jockey got a hold of me, and he said, those stupid letters you guys used to write to us, because I would write letters to them, and I would cut out pictures of Cream and Circus Magazine, and that was also part of the threat, was we would send these threatening letters, and we would say really goofy stuff like how the Beatles were horrible, and so was Led Zeppelin, that Kiss ruled the world. And, that's just the way we felt. And Rich Dickerson was the program director, and he said, "Do you remember those letters you wrote?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, why don't you try writing them again this time?" He said, "We'll call it the Kiss Army letter of the day, and you'll send like 3 or 4 at a time to me, and we'll read them 2 weeks up before the Kiss concert, because Kiss had announced that they were coming to play November the 21st at Holman Center as a headliner." And this was Rich Dickerson's idea, the guy that I had fought with for over a year about this stuff, and to this day, Rich just kind of laughs and says it was all just a big joke for him. I mean, he didn't take anything seriously about it. I mean, he just thought it was, just having a lot of fun. But
yeah.
and he might have been right, but we were teenagers and we took it seriously. We thought it was, it was war. It was the KISS Army, man. I mean, come on. So I write these letters, and they were pretty hilarious. The bad thing about the letters, though, were that Rich always got the last lick in. So he'd read what he called the KISS Army letter of the day, and then he'd say, well, this shows that most KISS fans don't have any higher IQ than the three chords of their favorite musicians or something. I mean, it would always be some kind of comment that would really, make us look bad. And then, of course, then we'd have to have a comeback for the next day. And we would do this for 2 weeks leading up to the concert. Well, eventually, the crazy stuff that Jay and I used to do too around there is we would convince my younger siblings and cousins to paint up as KISS, and we'd take them through our only local mall, and we'd call them the unknown soldiers of the KISS Army. And we just did it to walk like 10 paces behind them and just to laugh at the people's reactions as to seeing the painted up people as KISS. And this is just cheap tricks on a Friday or Saturday night in a mall in Terre Haute, Indiana. Well, eventually we would take them by the radio station and tease whoever the disc jockeys were on the air at that time, and they'd make a comment on the air about us, and we'd think that was, success. Well, one night we tried it, and all of a sudden it was Dickerson's wife answered the door, and she was out of breath, and she said, the KISS concert has sold out. KISS found out what you were doing, and they want to meet you. Well, I was just floored. I thought, well, I wouldn't really do this to try to meet KISS. We just tried to get the band on the radio. Well, I mean, we were just stunned. And after that, I started getting contacts from KISS's people at Coin Management daily. And that's how we got. Well, the other reason why we got noticed was that other bands had come to Terre Haute to play at Holman Center, and also bands who had gotten a lot more airplay than KISS, and they never sold out. They were lucky to get 6,000, 7,000 people. Elvis Presley at that time was the only other performer who had sold out Holman Center. Now KISS was the second. And KISS's people wanted to know what did they do differently promotion-wise in Terre Haute that they didn't do in other cities, because KISS's people were wise to that stuff. They were on top of what was going to happen, because that's the way their people worked. Whether it be what they did in Cadillac or the KISS Army.
I was going to say, yeah, Detroit would be the only other city I could think of, that had the same kind of passion for the band at that point.
Yeah, oh yeah, and maybe more with Detroit, because the difference between Terre Haute and Detroit is Terre Haute's a college town, very transient. So a lot of the people that were there with the KISS Army back in '75 are long gone, because it's people you get their college degrees and they leave, and there was a lot of industry in Terre Haute that's since gone. Whereas I think in Detroit, most of the people have pretty much stuck around. So yeah, they find out, KISS's Coin Management finds out about the sellout, and they wanted to know how it happened, and the radio station people could say, well, some 18-year-old kid's been writing letters for about a half a year, and he calls his group the KISS Army. So all of a sudden, I'm getting lots of attention, and I hadn't planned on it, but it was cool, and that's basically how we got started.
And then you got to meet the band at that show, right? They invited you.
Oh, yeah, it was one of the most incredible days of my life, because not only did I get to meet the band, I was able to invite some of my friends to an after-KISS party, and KISS brings me up on stage during like the second and third encore. I'm sitting on an Anvil fly case with Bill Aucoin watching the show, and not realizing, I just thought I was there watching the show, and Paul stops the concert to announce something about the KISS Army and to give me a plaque, and I'm like, this is just way too much for this kid from Terre Haute, Indiana. I mean, because KISS was already at that time was really huge. I mean, you could just see it coming. I mean, they couldn't have put another person in Holman Center that night, and I think Kiss played Chicago the next night, and it just went on and on from there. I mean, it was just,
So did they always did they keep in touch with you afterwards? Like every time they came to
No.
Indiana, did they give you free tickets or?
The free tickets went on for maybe a couple of years, and then after like 77 or so, it kind of got harder and harder for me to, get phone calls returned and stuff like that. And also there was an adjustment for me because I was, after the Terre Haute show, they flew me to New York, and oddly enough, I met Jim Neff there because they flew him to New York for Cadillac, and that was pretty much our rewards for what we were doing, I guess, in our prospective Kiss city. So we got to talk to each other and talk about what happened in Cadillac compared to what happened at Terre Haute and all that. And Kiss flew me to New York for 3 days. I did my first interview, which was with the Rolling Stone, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yes, they did do Kiss interviews. A guy by the name of Mr. David McGee. And that was kind of hard for me to get used to too, because I'd never done like interviews or anything like that. So that was kind of weird. But it was great. And so I come back to Terre Haute, and I keep thinking, well, see, originally when Kiss contacted me, Mr. Alan Miller, and he sent me a nice letter, and oddly enough, the letter is in Paul Stanley's new book. Paul put the picture in the book, and it was a tremendous honor to be in Paul's book.
Oh, in his most recent biography?
Yes.
Okay, I read that. Okay.
And Alan Miller's letter to me is in Paul's book, and it states how it was a pleasure talking to me over the phone and how he wanted to make the Kiss Army in Terre Haute a happening. And I was always under the impression that I was going to have a job with Kiss, working with the Kiss Army in Terre Haute. And
that would have been the dream job.
Well, yeah, for especially considering I at the time didn't have any aspirations of doing anything else. But I was also a very sick Kiss fan too. I would have done anything for those guys. Once I got a little bit of fame from the Kiss Army, I just thought I could do anything, and there was a lot of, I wouldn't say arrogance, but there was a point of me where I was a very driven Kiss fan who, once I came back to Terre Haute. And once I got my way, I was, I think the way I reacted towards the program directors and the radio stations after that wasn't done as well as I would have liked to have been. It just didn't turn out the way I wanted it to turn out because I didn't realize there was a give and take kind of thing. So when Kiss was criticized in the media in Terre Haute, I really took offense to it and went after people. And I think I would have handled it differently. But see, I was recruited. I was already in the Kiss Army full time, so I wasn't going to take anything less. And so if somebody said anything about the band, whether if they performed in Indianapolis and they didn't like the show or they didn't like Destroyer or something like that, it was a war. The war was on, and I think back to that time, and I think I probably would have handled it much more professionally, and much more realistically. But I was a teenager, and so anything. I mean, so I was, I get a care package from a company called Boutwell Enterprises in March or April, and they introduced themselves as the people who will be running the Kiss Army. And they're using me as a correspondent thing and or as a product person, of certain Kiss issues and things like that. And they basically say they hadn't handled other fan clubs like Elton John's and Queen's, and they were now going to handle the Kiss Army out of Canoga Park, California, I believe. And they were really great people. And another cool thing was I was pretty much on a mailing list for any Kiss merchandise I wanted. But of course, back then, the Kiss merch was nothing like today. I mean, if you got a couple belt buckles, a T-shirt, and a tour program, that was it, because that's basically all they offered. And, of course, there was a newsletter. And I had a relationship with them for several years until eventually I I just kind of got dissatisfied with the whole thing, and realized that
your idea was sold pretty much, eh?
Well, and I kept thinking that, well, if I'm a good soldier here and things work out and I'm good with these people, I still may get my wish. But after 2 or 3 years of that, you notice that it didn't happen. And then, like I said, that going along with the fact that I was getting less and less attention from a coin in the band that I was getting in '75, I started to become a little bit, well, let's put it this way. The same angry guy that went after the radio station became the angry guy that was not happy about his situation with the KISS Army. And I basically had a falling out with the coin and the band for quite a while.
Was there something that was said, or was it something?
There was quite a bit said between a lot of us, and you know, I mean, of course, a lot of stuff that's said is reactionary, whether it be from me or from Alan Miller or anybody in the band. But you know, who's to say what happened? Obviously, they felt that was the best career path to go, and that's fine. But you know, it is what it is, and it's the music business. It's not music friends, so you know.
I don't know if that's the KISS Army. I know, like, the KISS. I get emails from the KISS online. You know, when they're selling stuff. I don't know. Is that in conjunction with the KISS Army now? I don't even know.
Well, yeah, because basically the KISS Army, the concept that we knew as Boutwell, ended in 1980, and a lot of fans have used the KISS Army for their own little fandoms, whether it be KISS Australia or KISS Army Argentina, and that's fantastic because that's the cool thing about all of it, you know. But when I had my falling out with KISS, they had gotten so big that, I mean, it wasn't. They were doing interviews with non-music publications like Playboy and stuff like that. They were on TV. They were getting ready for the solo albums. So there was so much going on. Like one guy mentioned to me not too long ago when I did a similar interview, he says, "Are you even sure the KISS even knew that you were disgruntled?" Well, maybe they didn't. But, you know, things were so fast and furious back in those days that I don't think they even realized what they were sitting on as far as the merchandise, the whole KISS Army concept.
Would you communicate more directly with Bill Aucoin?
No, Alan Miller. Bill was always a real great guy. The few times I got to be around Bill, but Alan Miller was the guy who first contacted me. He was the guy who would contact me repeatedly when we were going through. Well, like he told me to go out and get a post office box. He told me and Jay one night to go to the radio station and to recruit as many people and to come up with a mailing list. And we were able to do that in one night. We came up like with 300 or 400 names. The radio stations basically let us go on the air and say, if you want to be on the KISS Army, give us your name and your address. We were creating mailing lists for Aucoin Management and Boutwell Enterprises unknowingly. But see, I was under the impression that I was going to be working for these guys. And, of course, Jay was in a quandary because he was probably a little bit more realistic about it because he was in his freshman year of college. So he couldn't put the time into it that he probably would have wanted to. But, again, he was looking at this as more as a realistic thing, you know, like, what kind of future is this? Maybe we both didn't think that KISS would even be around in 5 years. I mean, we don't know.
So when you met them there at that show, the November show in '75, was that the only time that you physically had a meeting with them?
No, because when I would get tickets to other shows like the Summer '76 tour, a lot of times I would find out where they were staying, and I'd get to see mainly Gene, sometimes Paul.
So you had to seek it out then. They wouldn't come to you. You would have to kind of make an effort to
No.
go see them.
But, you know, cool things happen. Like I remember one time in St. Louis, and I'm still kicking myself, but Gene said, what are you doing tomorrow? And I said, I got to go back to work. And he said, well, we're on a radio station. It'd be cool if you got to meet us there. And I'm thinking, you know, and that's the kind of way, that's the way Gene was, you know. I mean, he enjoyed me talking about the KISS Army story and all that. I think he he realized that when people hear it, it's a cool story, even if you're not a rock and roll fan. Even if you're not a Kiss fan, but a rock and roll fan, it's still a cool story. So here's Gene asking me to meet them the next day at the radio station, and I'm like, dang, I got to go back to work tomorrow. Well, now the more I thought about that, I would have taken a sick day or something. But when stuff like that happens, you don't realize the missed opportunities. But yeah, there was many times I'd gotten to see the band. Mostly they're from 76 to 77. I'd say 4 or 5 times, and I've met them. Well, let's see, quite a few times since 2000, but not in the same sense as I did in the 70s because things are a lot more private and guarded now.
You have seen Peter or Ace since those days?
No, and the funny thing about that is, and I always tell this to people when we do these podcasts, before I became, before the Kiss Army made it big, before I met the band, my favorite member was Ace, because on stage he was one badass dude. But once I got in with the clique, so to say, I never got to meet Ace. Never got to sit down and talk with him at all. It was just Gene, Paul, and Peter.
Maybe they kept him away or something because he was too loaded.
Well, Ace truly was a party guy, and that's what he would do. Whereas I think back in the early days, I was, you got to remember, I was a teenager hanging around with one of the most notorious rock groups at the time, because back then Kiss had a very dark image compared to the way they're more family friendly now, and so I think it was probably Gene's job to babysit me most of the time, and that's not to say Paul wasn't around, but Gene was the guy basically who he was how you doing, where you going, have you eaten, and that kind of stuff. Whenever I would come into to a place where they were playing, so it just happens to be that's the way it was. But Ace, to this day, I've never met the guy.
Did that after you had that falling out with the band, did you remain like a fan? Were you into the 80s Kiss or?
When it has such an effect on you like that, it's always going to be with you. And it was funny. I ended up getting a job with Columbia House, which was a division of Columbia Records out in Terre Haute. And so I would ship out Kiss CDs, and I would get teased a lot. And people would say, well, this is the guy that got screwed over by Kiss, or this is the Kiss Army guy. And, of course, a lot of it was also negative because a lot of these people weren't Kiss fans, so they would say that. Only the real cool Kiss fans would say, hey, that's a cool story, I appreciate it. So, you'd get digged at a lot because, here you were working in a factory, and you were the guy that started the Kiss Army, and they'd open up a CD and show you the Kiss Army logo in Detroit Rock Cities, or in the Destroyer album or something. So you got teased a little bit about it, but hey, what do they know? They none of them would probably ever get out of Terre Haute. So
you talked about the harassment in school and everything. I remember when I was going to school, public school, high school, that was like late 80s, early 90s for me, and it was still the same thing. There was a lot of Kiss sucks and all this.
Oh, yeah.
What was it until they put the makeup back on that I think, everybody really started getting into Kiss. There wasn't no longer, you're no longer a freak for liking the band.
Yeah, it was tough for me to be a fan during the 80s because once Ace and Peter left, I kind of wondered about the direction of the band. Plus, the taking off the makeup was really hard for me to accept because I thought back in the 80s Kiss was probably trying to be more like the hair bands rather than to be just like Kiss. So, it was tough for me to accept. And I really didn't start, of course I was always a fan. I always had my stuff, but I really didn't start to get excited about the band until 92 when one of the crazy kids who was in the factory, he said, Starkey, have you ever heard of the album Revenge? And I said, no, why? And he said, well, it's Kiss's new album and it kicks ass. And I thought it was pretty funny because this kid was a real metalhead, but I didn't think of him as being up on popular music. So I got revenge, and I got a kick out of it. And then all of a sudden, I get these phone calls from a guy by the name of Kurt Gooch, who ended up writing a Kiss book, and we started talking about Kiss occasionally. Well, I didn't realize the guy was prepping me for his book, basically, because he was interviewing me, and stuff I would tell him would eventually be in his book. And he was telling me, he says, there's these things called these Kiss conventions, and they're coming around, and he said, you ought to go to one. And I said, well, what goes on there? And he says, well, you're part of Kiss Trivia. And I said, really? And he says, also, there's a book out called Kisstory. And so I ended up getting Kisstory at that time, which was a lot of money, not knowing what it was about. And I was thrilled to see that I was in the book. So I thought, well, hey, this is kind of cool. I said, Kiss has still got me in the book. I'm still in the fold. So I got an interest to see the band, and I went to, I think, one of the Kiss conventions here, where they were, what was it, 94, when they were touring, and
the ones Tommy Thayer was, yeah.
Tommy Thayer was their road manager, and I introduced myself to Tommy, and it was really funny, and he was just really nice, and he said, why don't you come back later at 6 o'clock with your scrapbook, because I was showing him my old Kiss pictures, like a Kiss geek, and meet the band. He said, it's been a while, and I said, yeah. So I get there at 6 o'clock, and it's funny, Gene shakes my hand, and he says, Billy, he goes, can you get me a picture of the kids surrounding the radio station? And I'm like thinking, what kids surrounding the radio station and what picture? And, Gene's really sincere about this. I mean, he's not pulling my leg or anything. He wants to know if I can get him a copy of this picture. So I don't know what I'm doing. I'm changing the subject or something. And then eventually he says, well, would you come on stage with him? I'm like going, wow. I mean, I'm not worthy. It's like a Wayne World thing. Yeah, I'll come on stage with you. So one of the things they do during the convention is they sit on these stools and they take questions from the audience.
I was at one of those in Cobo, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they had them in every city all across the country. And at that time, I think we only paid like $100 to go to the thing, and it was, you look at it now, it was just tremendous. You had 8, 9, 10 hours of Kiss.
$100 meet and greet plus a show.
Oh, incredible. It was the best thing ever. I wish they'd still do that. And Gene gets out of his chair, and I'll never forget, his chair had, what did he have? He had his name on the back. Monster. I think they taped Monster on the back of his chair. And Gene gets out of his chair, and I get to sit in his chair. I don't know if there was Gene and Paul, Bruce Kulick, and Eric Singer. And Paul starts telling the Kiss Army story, and it's kind of awkward for me because nobody, and this is what's cool about Kiss. They hadn't seen me in a long time, and they had no idea what I was going to say. I mean, I could have gone up there and slammed the band. I could have said a bunch of stupid shit, or who would have known? But they had enough balls to say, well, come on up on stage and you can say, come on up and join us. And so Paul tells the Kiss Army story, and he does it, as eloquently as Paul does, and they're expecting me to give the other half of the story about the kids surrounding the radio station, and I'm like feeling really awkward, and I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to say, So he points to me to finish the story, and I kind of dance around it, and I said, well, yeah, and this happened and that happened and everything like that, and I had to look over at Paul, and he's like looking at me like, I don't know what the fuck he's just talked about, but, let's go on and play some music. And what it was, he expected me to just talk about, the comment about, well, if you don't play Kiss by such and such time, we're going to surround the radio station, and it didn't happen that way. So I was kind of left.
Yeah, that's.
So I mean, you do what you. I've always been about telling the truth about stuff because there's even though the Kiss Army's been around for 40 years, there's a lot of people that were there that I kind of owe it to them to tell it like it is, and sometimes I even, by no fault of my own, sometimes you don't talk about the other people that were also involved, because the Kiss Army wasn't about Bill Starkey; it was about other people as well. So we all had a good time, and then Kiss came out and played that acoustic set, which eventually became Unplugged, and that ended up being one of the best Kiss shows I had seen. That's pretty much the way the relationship's been with the band since then. So I ran into Paul, what was it, 2 years ago? I had, for a while, Tommy contacted me through emails, and he offered me the opportunity to go to some shows, and I picked some shows, and that was really cool too, because I would always try to find people to take with me who had never seen the band who I could convert, rather than people who I knew who were diehard fans that were all going to get tickets anyway. So I got to go to like 3 shows, and one of the shows was here in Indianapolis, and it was kind of neat because even though you got backstage access, that doesn't mean you're backstage, because there's different levels of that, you know? I mean, you might even be, sometimes you might be in the catering area, sometimes you might not be in that area at all. So we were waiting along the meet and greet line with my boss, who oddly enough is the principal, who also is a Kiss fan, and Kiss is walking to the meet and greet tent, and they're maybe 30 feet away from us, but I could read Tommy's lips, and he's walking with Paul, and he says, "There's Bill over there." And Paul breaks ranks and walks all the way over to shake my hand. And all the Kiss fans behind me just went nuts, because, I mean, they just don't do that. And then I didn't know what to say, you know, other than thanks for the tickets. And he and Tommy walked back to the tent, and then Gene follows him, and Gene stops and waves to me, and I said, "Hey, thanks for the tickets." And Gene says, he points to me, he says, "You're the man." And I said, "No, you're the man." And then he takes like his water bottle like he's the Pope, and he's like blessing us with water. And then Gene walks into the tent, and then Kiss performs. This was like 9,900-degree heat at the State Fair. Then I run into Paul at the Indie Expo here, and I just signed up to get his book signed, and I wanted to get in line and tell him thanks for putting me in the book. I enjoyed the book. I thought it was great, and he said something about, well, this is the guy that started it all, and then you take your book and you go on to the next person. So that's been my Kiss experiences to date.
Sounds like they're grateful, you know, now. You know, I think back then in the late 70s with the falling out, I just think they were in a lot of turmoil themselves. You know, there was a lot of stress probably involved with what they were going through.
Oh, there was a lot of stuff. I think that the Peter and Nate stuff had reached a head. I think they were all wondering, like, what direction they're going to take with the solo albums. Like I said, they were being interviewed by all kinds of people that weren't even music publications, because it was just, VH1 did that special when Kiss ruled the world. In that era, they really did rule the world. And when you only had like three TV stations to watch, your only outlets were like, you know, mail and the newspaper. There wasn't, you know, emails or MP3s or stuff like that. Kiss truly did rule the world during that era. I mean, it was a cultural phenomenon of the 70s. So the fact that it still exists today, 40 years later, is awesome.
Are you heading out to Cadillac, Michigan 40-year anniversary?
No, that's a good 5-6 hours drive for me. I considered it. It was just, I don't know, I didn't want to drive up there by myself. I know some good friends here who are going to be there, and I know Mr. Speed is performing there, and I'm very good friends with them. They're one of the best, if not the best, Kiss tribute bands around. I'm aware of it. I just had not planned on attending it. It kind of snuck up on me in a way.
I thought, you know, for the Cadillac High School anniversary, I thought it'd be cool if they had the LA Kiss take on the original high school team. Just as a joke.
Oh, you know, and you know what? And that's probably why people like you should have worked for Aucoin Management, because Aucoin probably would have come up with stuff like that. I mean, I had to laugh because somebody was commenting, you know, that nothing was going on. Now, Kiss has done some interviews and stuff like that for the thing, which is great. So they've acknowledged it, but when it comes to any kind of celebrations for the 40th right now, Kiss really isn't doing anything other than the shows. So, I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. the weird thing about like this and the Kiss Army, and I'm finding it out now, it means so much more to Kiss fans than it does to Kiss. So it just you just kind of leave it alone and let the fans do what they want to do. I saw the monument that they made in Cadillac, and I just thought that was really neat. And there's always should have been something done in Terre Haute. And I cannot for the life of me figure out why, other than the fact that, maybe, I think, because I always look at things as a Kiss fan, I think if you got to look at it from how a non-Kiss fan looks at it, maybe they look at the Kiss Army in Terre Haute as something different. I don't know. I don't know. So right now, there's nothing that's going to happen in Terre Haute. So,
are you affiliated with the Kiss Army Terre Haute Facebook page?
I didn't know that there even one existed.
Oh yeah, there is one. Yeah, I think it's got a couple.
Really?
Yeah, Kiss Army Terre Haute. Yeah, I should check it out.
Maybe I should, because I got people that contacted me constantly. Like I said, this is the second podcast I've done in like 2 weeks. So, I mean, I'm accessible. It's just I haven't heard that anything's going to happen. So now they did have a lot of cool stuff happen during the 35th, and fans even actually showed up for that from all over the country.
Yeah, that was the first time where I heard like November 21st was the Kiss Army Day. That was around the same time that it started to be brought up. I had no idea before then. Like, I knew about the story. I just didn't know about the November 21st. I think that's a cool day. It's like a holiday for Kiss fans. I mean, I don't think I'm going to work.
I always tell people that it's a day where you should call up your radio station and ask for Kiss music, because that's basically what happened. So that's the day you should do that. I wanted to try something at the radio station in Terre Haute where I played Kiss tunes all day, but they were not willing to allow that to happen. But that's,
Well, now it's the playlists are so automated now. I mean, if you did play Kiss...
Oh, yeah.
Be about 5 songs or something that you would play. They'd play Detroit Rock City, Rock Roll All Night, Oh,
I originally was willing to do it. I thought, I'm going to take off work. I'm going to go down there and just let me play Kiss tunes one after the other, and we'll work it into the program. They were not going to do that. They were willing to allow me to have maybe a couple of hours. And people called in. It was great. People that called in, and the mayor came in and gave us the key to the city again, which was cool. So they did recognize us as far as downtown at City Hall. And what's funny is I think Kiss gave me a really cool plaque back in '75 for starting the Kiss Army that, of course, proudly hangs in my house. Well, they also gave an even bigger plaque to Holman Center in Terre Haute, and to this day, none of us can find it. We don't know where it's at. I think somebody took it, but we can never get a straight answer from the people at Holman Center. So, I mean, if you know how Kiss stuff is and how people can get sticky fingers, it doesn't surprise me if something's gone.
What do you think about the future of the band? I know they talk a lot about maybe continuing it as a Kiss 2.0 with, replacing Gene and Paul. I just wonder what your thoughts on that were.
Well, I don't see how you could replace Gene and Paul myself. I mean, Gene and Paul are the ones that kept me interested in the band. I'd even heard people's name mentioned personally who they thought could replace Gene and Paul, which I think is amusing, and maybe so. But I don't know. I have no idea what the future of the band is. I mean, I think everything nowadays is based strictly on a monetary and a financial situation, which is fine. But
seems to me they're in a redundant pattern now. They do these summer tours, and then they do their summer tour, and then they do the Kiss cruise in the fall. It just seems like it's sort of a redundant thing now, like the.
Well, I think they look at. I think, and let me make this clear: I am in no way speaking for the band or connected with the band or have any connections with the band. But I just think everything's just basically done in a profit mode, and that's what's looked at. I even think that when I see Gene and Paul selling the separate guitars during a Kiss cruise, it's almost like, I don't want to say one-upsmanship, but it's like it's more done for the individual rather than for the band. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, but I'll look at it this way. as long as it's available and people purchase it, I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
You know, like when didn't they come up with a coffee table book that was outrageous a while back, and people went nuts over that, and I'm like, well, you know, they wouldn't put it out if there wasn't a market for it, because they truly do look at the market before they come up with stuff. I do know they do that much of it.
Was that the book that came out in 2012 there? It was like $4,000 or something? Is that
yeah,
one?
Something like that. Right, and it was in different, you had different countries, could have different, they wouldn't do that stuff if they didn't test the waters and finding out whether or not it's available and all that. And so when they look at celebrations like Cadillac or Terre Haute, which I think that there's a marketable benefits to those things, but today's marketing people can't produce enough information to show them that, yeah, if you do this, maybe down the road this and this, you know, will benefit you, you know, because they're still living off the Cadillac thing and the Kiss Army thing decades later, more than they realize.
So you think that would be a waste? That would be a waste of time for them, you know, if there's no money involved. You know, they
no, I don't think it would be a waste of time, but I think that everything's based so much on marketing and marketing strategies that they'll look at something and say, well, can we benefit from doing this, or will it be cost effective or not? And I think that the way today's marketing things are geared for the fast buck and all that, I don't think that will show up with any marketing firm. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we fans can see the benefit of it. Here's another way to explain it to me that I can say. I mean, I personally don't have any feud or anything like that going along with the Ace and Peter stuff, but I think that from what I'm reading on the message boards and stuff like that, that I think Kiss has kind of hurt their fan base by the constant harping about Ace and Peter stuff. I think that if they would have been better off just not saying anything, and people would still be Kiss customers, as you would call them.
What do you mean, like the bashing that goes in the press between the like?
Definitely. I mean, I kind of laugh at the Paul D. Snyder stuff. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I think that's cool. But I think when occasionally somebody has to make a comment about Ace and Peter or another dig in or something like that, I don't know that that's beneficial.
I think it hurts
because I have a lot of people that come after me on Facebook and say, well, you know, you're just a puppet for the band, or you're just, you know, you don't see it our way. I'm like, no, I respect Peter and Ace completely and everything they've contributed, and I wish them well and hope they reach as much success as they could possibly get. But I still like Kiss the way they are right now with Eric and Tommy, and do support them as well. So I don't consider myself a part of the feud, but I think when stuff is said sometimes in the media, I think that hurts Kiss's bottom line money-wise too more than they think it does, because I think those people are potential Kiss customers, and maybe they're turned off by all the bickering stuff. I mean, I truly believe everything Paul and Gene has said about their troubles with Ace and Peter, because I know firsthand from people who were there and witnessed it. And it's not made up. I mean, it was tough. It was tough for the band to survive when you had two guys who were looking at things through a business standpoint and two guys who were looking at things through a party atmosphere. And that's the way it happened. And thank God Eric and Tommy were there to step in and keep the legacy going.
Yeah, that's why, like, I don't get too caught up in the characters, like the spaceman.
No, I don't either. I really get upset when people say crappy stuff about Tommy and the makeup. To me, Tommy's probably doing Ace better than Ace could have done. Yeah. And I know people who really like Ace, and like I said, he was my main guy in the beginning. But I think Tommy's done a pretty damn good job. And if anything, and this is strictly my opinion, I think Tommy could show you a lot more, but I think he's pretty much resigned to doing what he's told to do in terms of his playing and his style and all that, and that's what he does. I mean, you know, he's the spaceman, and that's what he does, but I think he's probably a really even more creative guy than what we've seen, but he's limited as to what he's told to do, you know, and probably Eric is the same way. They're great musicians on their own. They don't even have to be in Kiss to show that. But I think they do what they do because, you know, you're going to be you're going to play Ace's solos this way, and you're going to do Peter's drums this way, and that's the way it's going to be. But hell, I used to go see Eric when he was with Alice Cooper because I loved Eric. I thought, man, this guy's awesome. I loved Alice Cooper as well.
Eric Singer seems to be a little more acceptable as a cat man. I think, me personally, I like his vocals better. I don't know, Tommy Thayer's. I mean, I would rather see Eric Singer sing "Hooligan" than Tommy sing "Shock Me." I think if Tommy sang "Cold Gin," that would be great.
Tommy doesn't even need to have to sing any of that, the Ace stuff. I mean, that's fine for Ace. I told people a while back, and I thought this was kind of funny. I said, I would get a kick out of the fact that Kiss did a tour where all they played was the stuff off the most recent 2 albums, because I thought that the last 2 albums were pretty good.
Yeah, I liked them too.
And if they played stuff off Monster and Sonic Boom and just had like, well, this is the Monster Sonic Boom tour, you're not even going to hear Rock and Roll All Night on this tour. I'd be game for that because I'm curious to hear how those songs would sound live. And that's really what it was all about with me, was just hearing the new stuff. So, but you know what? I don't think, again, they're going to look at it from a marketing, a financial thing and say, well, I don't think we're going to do this because we're going to alienate the people that are coming that want to hear the hits. And that's fine. But sometimes the marketing people can be wrong. It's like somebody told them to do the Thanksgiving Day parade float thing too, and I don't think that worked out that well.
Yeah, anyway, it was a pretty good interview here. Got well over an hour, so 65 minutes. Anything else you'd like to say, or?
No, I want to say that I always enjoy my place in history, and I always get way more credit than I deserve from the Kiss Army and the Kiss fans, but I relish it and always will relish it. And the Kiss fans are some of the best people I've ever met. So I'm always amazed at how much attention I get, and the fact that something that happened 40 years ago we're still talking about. I mean, it's just amazing. Now that is one thing I never would have dreamed, that I could be close to 60 years old and still be talking about my days as a teenage heavy metal kid.